let me welcome you at the fourth panel of the fourth day of the 2020's Finweek conference. And this panel will be focused on the business blockchain and B2B Fintech solutions and how we are waiting for its development. For this panel, let me introduce our speakers. So Mr. Adam Butler, who is a Chief Strategy Officer of the Atlas 3T. I hope we can hear him. Then Mr. Branislav B.Majerník, who is a Solution Architect at Oracle.
Hello, good afternoon for everyone.
Good afternoon. Mr. Samir Parek, who is founder and CEO of the ThinkSense.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. And Mr. Artur Olechovský, who is the Managing Director of Codet. Afternoon.
Hello, hi.
Hi. So let me first briefly introduce the event. 2020's Finweek started on Monday with the address of the Minister of Finance of the Slovak Republic, Mr. Eduard Heger. And the first 3 days were focused on the financing crisis, the financial literacy, the event of Invest Summit, and today's, as the future topic is focused on the fintech as the event Fintechsummit. Then let me please thank the partners of the main partners of the event, who are the main partners, the Ministry of Finance of the Slovak Republic and the National Bank of Slovakia, the British Embassy Bratislava as a partner, and the supportive partners of the Bratislava Stock Exchange, Československá obchodní banka, Oracle Corporation, and Raiffeisen Bank. So to get to the topic, probably one of the best things how to start the discussion is let every panelist to introduce their relation to the topic and to really say what's new in their own field, because the first question I give is what is currently going on in the B2B fintech and maybe in your field. So let me ask with Mr. Majerník from Oracle.
Thank you for word. Let me introduce myself. I'm working like solution architect in Oracle company more than 20 years. And my role is to prepare for customer the solutions which is based on, for example, new technologies approaches like the digital disruption technologies, including blockchain, including IoT, including machine learning. Blockchains are very interesting topic because many customers expect it because they have some experience with the cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Littlecoin, any other things, and they expect from the blockchain similar functionality for their environments because they recognize, especially into B2B business, they need something where can they share their data, their transactions, and automate their transactions. And blockchains looks like good technology approach, how to do it. But anyway, many customers are not available or not able to realize what's the difference between the public and private blockchain and have two different, let's say, branches. One is public, one is private, and this private is more suitable for the business transactions due to several reasons like the transaction scope, any other things. And I think many people recognize they are not able to adopt this kind of the technology in their applications. And due to, I think it's good to have such kind of meetings or such kind of events to have the opportunity to explain to people what is difference between the public, private blockchain, how blockchain can influence their business, and for what is suitable and for what not. Because as many surveys show us, the ratio of adoption of blockchain is not high because people not understand how blockchain works, and probably on the market, not too much providers are able to provide a carrier-grade platform for blockchains, especially for this private.
Mr. Butler, can we hear each other?
Yeah.
Great. So how is going on in your field?
Not bad, just a few connection issues, getting used to online, everything online.
Okay. And maybe to your field of the B2B Fintech, maybe how do you see what is the topics to be new and maybe to be discussed maybe on such events now?
Yeah, so I think from our side, we do a lot of work with blockchain, obviously. So we've seen a lot of work on trying to get, sorry, there's a lot of echo. I'm just going to try about the headphones in. Can you guys hear me okay? Sorry. Yeah, so from our side, we do a lot of work with security in particular. So we have a lot of efforts required for basically security access, for trying to automate a lot of payments, for example, and also trying to improve trust and validity with a lot of the data. So that's where we see a lot of requirements in our field in particular. A lot of stuff we do is mostly experimental case study work. We haven't seen any live kind of grand scale use cases yet. Anything that's been done is more private instances. But obviously with blockchain, the idea has been to create a wider community. So we've been looking at how you can create maybe a ledger that can be shared with everyone. But then you have to look at more of a consortium approach to do those sort of situations. So it's been a bit of it's been more experimental from our side so far. Hope that.
Mr. Parek, what are the topics which you are most interested in now and maybe for the coming future?
So when it comes to blockchain, let me just quickly introduce myself. I've got like 18 years experience working in investment banking, coming from Lehman Brothers all the way to Citibank, BNP Paribas, Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, London Stock Exchange as well at one point in time. And what I understand is when it comes to relationship of emerging technologies like AI, blockchain, and finance, it is one of those things whereby we can easily say these are made for each other. We started our company. I'm currently in the field of AI, process mining, and robotic process automation or intelligent automation. But I have a very deep understanding about finance, given that's where my background is. When it comes to blockchain as a technology, I can understand that blockchain is one of those things which everyone is looking at it's the future. When it comes to securitization, when it comes to sharing contracts, when it comes to things like clearing, distributed blockchains, etc., come in very, very handy when it comes to financial markets. But clearly, there is a little bit of resentment. There is a little bit of maturity required when it comes to technology in general. And if I may say so, when it comes to banks in general, they are all experimenting with these things. They are all looking at these technologies, but there needs to be a certain level of more maturity, providers, the infra, etc., being ready. And I think it's a very bright technology. It's soon going to pick up. But I think in current recent climate with COVID and all those things, it's a bit difficult to gauge when this thing is going to happen. But I clearly see it happening within 1 year or something, where everyone would be looking at blockchain for all those aspects whereby trust-based contractual requirements would be required between multiple B2B banks, etc., etc.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Olechowski, to finish this opening round, what is new in your field, and maybe what's really the most interesting topic for you now?
Yes, maybe a short introduction. So I'm managing director of the Codete, which is a company, a service provider. We are consulting and implementation company. So yeah, we see quite of huge interest in blockchain technology itself, and we seeing across the many industries. So for us, it's really interesting to see how it evolve. I believe that the blockchain is at the stage of its kind of life cycle, which is after the hype. So right now we can expect more and more interesting case studies, interesting projects implemented in the business, making some some interesting project which can be used using this technology. And so our clients are mostly looking to implement new emerging technology stack, new solutions, and blockchain is among them. So we see quite a big, like I said, a big demand, especially in the fintech, which kind of started the whole thing, let's say. So yeah, for us, like I said, I really like the current status right now, which is maybe not so big buzz anymore, but it's should be more stable. More and more solutions are out there which we can use really to help our clients to implement blockchain. There's bigger community. There's much bigger, to be brutally honest. There's much more, on the Stack Overflow and GitHub. So you can use much more of that to create some value for the client, and connects all those dots together. So I think it's a good time for such a discussion and to look into the blockchain more and more.
Mm-hmm. As I can see, the blockchain will be really a key topic, but before we get to the details, I stop at something else, and it's the users or the clients at the B2B segment. Maybe who are now the users or clients for the B2B fintech solutions from your point of view? And I like how Mr. Parek mentioned the maturity of the players in the field or in the market. But what about the customers? We may think about companies in the financial market, but what about others, the trade companies, any other companies interested in payments? Because as we see, 120 trillion, which is, as I think, the amount of money processed by the technology, it's really kind of a big amount of work. So what to do with that, and what clients are mostly interested in such new technologies used?
Well, thanks very much for that question, actually. When you consider that technology and let's say the segment or the sector of the clients, payments is an interesting space. But not to mention, payment also is heavily regulated. There is currently a certain amount of infra and the work already done by the big players like banks in order to report all those things. So I think it will take a little bit longer for the payment technology to embrace upcoming emerging technologies like blockchain. There are certain elements which are required in this aspect. Let's say, for example's sake, sharing the ledger or looking at the current state of a transaction. It's a beautiful way where blockchain can be used. But looking at the personal account details, what is the bank balance of a person in order to create that transaction, it's not something that people are so much, let's say the end users, they are so much comfortable with this technology. So as time goes ahead, technology does become mature. As time goes ahead, there is awareness about the technology. Maturity does not only mean with, okay, it's widely available. It has gone through a certain amount of burn-up period whereby there had been some issues and the issues have been resolved and people have confidence in using those technologies. So when it comes to blockchain, These are the things that are still yet to happen. And there is no clear-cut answer as to when, but clearly it happens over a period of time where there would be wider scale adaptations. There would be a certain amount of trust, and soon going forward, this technology will transition from a B2B space to a B2C space, and that's where precisely payments are.
What about the other fields or speakers? Maybe I can add to the questions. There are not only traditional segments of your customers or the customers of the B2B Fintech services, but also completely new business models or business areas, like, for example, technologies or mobility provided as a service, which is something which is really coming using the new aspects of the shared economy, but it not only takes some specific technology solutions, but also is very much, however, in B2B or B2C area, but at the end the B2B solutions are also part of the offer for the individual clients or customers. What are the new requirements of such customers, which are completely new? Is it part of your work to really develop new business models for the companies using shared economy?
I can try and answer that a little bit. So I think some of the interesting things that blockchain can offer is an interoperability between various solutions. So we actually worked on a shipping ports project looking at document management throughout the ports. So what we found was that there was about £8 million worth of administration costs that were associated with basically manual data entry. The various types of documents would require the same information over and over again. So what we kind of built was a proof of concept that would show just one data entry point could then auto-populate every other piece of paper that needed that specific information. It reduced administration costs, but also it reduced the amount of time that a container was required to stay in the harbour from 30 days to 15. So that was something we looked at from the shipping ports perspective, but then we could also expand that out into other areas such as trade finance, which is quite a popular area where there's a lot of useful examples where blockchain can potentially add a lot of value and reduce a lot of the kind of wastage time and costs that are associated when you're navigating sort of one package to another. So that's something that we're seeing from that side. And once you create that, like I said, that interoperability component, you can then really explore the business models a bit further, and you can see kind of new emerging players that could enter the market with something a bit new, innovative, and exciting. And that's kind of where the shared economy is coming in. You're going to see more, especially with vehicle sharing. I think that's something that we're seeing more of. Copenhagen's got a few good startups in the city around that, and it will open up interesting new business models, but at the moment I think probably the biggest area where we're seeing some change is probably the decentralized finance space, where there's a lot of kind of projects that are looking at kind of moving a lot of banking institution processes into a digital environment using cryptocurrencies, and that's creating a brand new industry in a way. So that's definitely going to be happening more and more.
Very much, Mr. Majerník, for a technology company with such a wide portfolio of not only products and services but also customers as Oracle, how do you see the level of maturity of the customers of various segments, maybe various kinds of business? Is it changing, or on which fields?
I think it's changing. The customer recognize the capabilities and possibilities and opportunities in the shared economy. And Oracle as company has several references, including also financial sector. For example, using the blockchain for invoicing, factoring, reconciliation, also in retail, also in the field services, for example, food agriculture, where, for example, the shared information and trustable information about the food origin is very important due to regulation things, to fair trading. Also, we have some attempts in the education, references in education regarding the public services or public sector, especially for some edu-chain, or let's say common ledger of trusted information about the certification and education of the persons. That means, as I said, Oracle as a global company, technology company, recognized this demand on the market and try to answer with their platform, especially as you said, like the service. That means many of these things and platform are offered like service in the clouds.
Does the current situation affected by the COVID pandemic somehow affects the requirements of the clients? Maybe as more and more operations are done without contact from remote, without any specific needs to deliver personally or just to make any kind of document management or any other carriers. Is it somehow changed? Can it speed up the development of these services?
Yes, I think yes. This pandemic is a very strong driver for cloudification and digitalization of the economy. Also, the interaction between people. Blockchain can help some part to solve some kind of the problems, but I think the other colleagues can also answer to this question.
I think when it comes to...
I can agree with you. So at the very beginning, we saw quite a slowdown of the new investigation and new project development. But at some time, actually, we saw opposite direction, and more clients looking for to digitalize some processes much, and the need is much bigger than even before. So I believe that the whole COVID situation and the whole the situation that makes those companies to move to this into this direction of digitalization much faster will also impact the implementation of technologies such as blockchain. So yeah, we saw that.
Parek, your opinion?
Well, I think it's a bad situation to be in, but when it comes to digitization, one has never emphasized, at least in my lifetime, I've never seen a situation whereby companies are looking forward to digitize so much more. These days, working from home, working remotely, or geolocation does not matter, has become a new norm. Even we are having this conversation with people sitting in different geolocations. I remember myself, last 2 times I've been an attendee of this Fintechsummit. Regards to this, with thanks to the British Consulate in Bratislava. I have been coming there physically, but these days, well, it is the new norm. We work remotely, we work with technology, and believe it or not, it's a good driver for digitization. There are going to be new changes in the way we work. Previously, there was nice Uber pool. People used to get into a pool of car people who sit into the same car and go to office. What now? People are not going to office anymore. Things are changing. Digitization is on the rise, and it's going to be here to stay. Because with every changing situation, every calamity, we as human beings have understood that a calamity is always followed by an opportunity. Amidst calamity rises opportunity. There are new players entering into the market, much more digital market, and old players or old ways of doing business are soon going to change. They're going to be deprecated. So hopefully we see much more changes. On the payment side, I was just about to mention We've seen Chinese yuan going digital soon enough. So there is a new digital currency who is going to come in the market. And this only points to one direction. We're going to see much more digital finance, blockchain, digital wallets, payments, cross-border payments, all soon driving towards digital. We see one country, one of the biggest economies in the world, China, moving towards that, and hopefully others may very well follow the lead. I think on this aspect, it does make a lot more sense to be more digital. COVID was never on anyone's equation. It was not anyone's choosing. None of the companies ever planned for a pandemic like this, not in our lifetime. But yet we are in the situation and we are thriving. We are surviving. We are making the most of the situation as much as we can. We are evolving, and I think situations would evolve.
And does it somehow change the geographical structure of the ecosystem in the B2B fintech services or in blockchain? For example, during the last years, London, of course, has become the center or one of the strongest locations globally. But is it somehow changes the situation for other locations? Okay, I may ask about Bratislava because I'm now speaking from here. To become more important for maybe not only for local customers but also globally, and what are the important factors to create strong players in this field?
Well, when it comes to London, it had been, it is, and I think it will be one of the biggest and the strongest players when it comes to finance, purely because there is nowhere in the world where you have such an influx of people with expertise in finance as an industry. It's just unbeatable. You cannot beat it. But there is one more major contributor towards London. It's an evolving ecosystem. The way this ecosystem, the finance ecosystem, evolves is just unprecedented. In one part of the world, it may take 10 years for some technology to be adapted. London is one of those places which has got the highest rate of adaptability, and that's what keeps the fintech industry in UK and particularly in London going ahead. We are extremely adaptive about new technologies. We understand and embrace the technology and retain the talent that requires for us to be at the forefront of fintech. Finance and London are synonymous. You can put them as two different words, but to me, when I see, those are equivalent. They are exactly the same meaning. Adaptability, embracing the technology, and having the talent and the vision will, plus the government backing to do so. That's what makes us different. We're not afraid of taking experiments. We are not afraid of taking big risks. We take the risks and we make the most of those. That's what makes us.
What about the others? How do you see the environment, especially the legal and regulation environment in EU, which is currently not anymore including Britain? How do you see it? Are there any obstacles to further development of these services, or is it just solving the technical issues?
I think one of the key things that's really important, especially with new technology, is you need a good startup culture. That's something that London's been very lucky with, is that they've had Silicon Roundabout, which is in East London, which has spun off a bunch of very successful startups. And we do have a good environments like foster and incubate and expand on interesting, exciting ideas. Big corporate businesses aren't always known for being innovative. They normally have to be forced to be innovative. That's why companies like TransferWise exist. a big bank like Barclays, HSBC was never going to do something like what those guys have done. Same with Revolut, same with Monzo. They just come out from interesting startups that have just built up a really big following and got a lot of money and have grown quite substantially. The big thing with blockchain is that it is borderless. No one owns blockchain. It's supposed to be decentralized. And that's a really great principle to have in a technology. We could, in theory, build a bank in Uruguay tomorrow and set it up and get it going. And we could then bring customers in from Asia, from Africa, from the US. There's loads of opportunity. However, one thing that, I can't do with a team of 5 engineers who are born and raised in England is go and build solutions for people in Africa or people in South America. I don't understand what their problems are unless I go and physically speak to them and build a solution for them in mind. There's lots of opportunities, but they do need to come in from people in the developing countries who have ideas, but they need the funding and the backing to support them. And government initiatives is a big thing. I think the governments in many countries need to help support these type of ideas and entrepreneurs. And there's a long track record of various countries that have put in that investment, and they've seen the returns with massive companies that 10 years ago didn't exist, and now everyone's using them or everyone's aware of them. So I think that's the key thing that we got to be focusing on if we want blockchain to continue evolving and growing, is to look at some of these startups, start incubating them, and start providing them the support they need and resources, so then these people can thrive and challenge. And then what we'll then see is we'll start seeing corporations integrating in more systems, using blockchain more within their banking services or their business services. And that's probably the key things we got to start looking for to get blockchain a bit more mainstream per se.
Olechovsky, however, Warsaw or Bratislava are capital cities. Their position is much less central in the international finance. So how do you see the situation? Are there any obstacles in the regulation, in the expertise, or any other areas for the future development in the field of fintech services in B2B or blockchain?
To be perfectly honest, for sure, we'll be a little bit behind with the regulations, at least I believe in Poland. But I also know that we will probably follow the changes after some times, which European Union directs, for example. So that's a good thing that we are in this union. Right now, it's not regulated at all in Poland, so it's something which is kind of can be an obstacle. But when it comes to the countries which are struggling with some, for example, a trust to the banking system, and the whole finance ecosystem is not that embedded into the way of the people are thinking. Maybe this is also the way to create some new ideas and to create some new startups usage for blockchain, where decentralization will be much more relevant and much more interesting. So coming from maybe not in Poland, but looking at the for example countries in Africa, we can think about the usage of this technology and to kind of make it work on a global scale, or not global scale, but on a whole country scale or continent. So it's not like only London can, or big countries, big financial centers can create some innovation over here. I believe that those developing countries where the struggles with legal stuff or with the finance ecosystem itself could stimulate some new ideas of how to use decentralization model to handle the finance or the payments, for example. So
Thank you very much. Okay, I know the business development issues are important, but I know you guys are mostly much more into technology. So my next question is completely aiming to the new issues of the business blockchain implementation, and maybe I will ask Mr. Butler, and I even think you have some kind of a structured information for some slides. So can you give us the information or maybe some news? What's the real the actual questions for the problems that blockchain should solve?
Yeah, so I think from the technical side, blockchain has a few scalability problems at the moment. Cost is predominantly the main thing. I think quite a lot of blockchains obviously have a high amount of energy usage. So running them and scaling them up is quite tricky to do. There are various projects out there that are trying to make it cheaper. As the Atlas City designed Catalyst protocol to make it a lot more energy efficient. I think the goal for us was to make it carbon neutral. And there's also a couple of other large projects as well that are moving into that frame. But I think that's the key thing from a technical side, is making it more scalable, making it cheaper to deploy. And then what you're doing then is from, if as a CEO or a CTO, you're starting to see a bit more better cost savings from it. So yeah, to go through a bit more about my slide presentation. So as a quick introduction, we built the Catalyst protocol. So it's an open source blockchain that can be deployed in both public and private networks. So some of the key features we focused on was for it to be a document management and storage system, which is quite useful. Most applications need files, so it's useful to have as a key feature. But the nice thing about blockchain versus other databases, which I'll just go through now, is that centralized databases like SQL Server and Oracle, they can be easily edited and changed, whereas blockchain requires multiple users all to be aligned whenever a change is made. So you're not blindly trusting data. It's all exactly what should be there. We also built Catalyst so you can run logic that interacts with the internet while maintaining its secure environment. So it means we can run faster transactions per second than a retail payment network also. So how would you use something like this in a B2B environment? So a case study to demonstrate this would be the payments and invoice. B2B payments are different to your standard B2C, and they're much more often and frequent, and also recurring. So for example, a retailer might receive a monthly recurring shipment from a supplier, and will have to set payment schedules agreed in advance. So there are typically multiple parties involved, such as accountants, billings, procurement, etc. And the payment cycle could be anywhere between 30 and 90 days. But by using blockchain technology such as Catalyst, whenever company A needs to pay company B, we can generate a smart contract to calculate the funds required to be transferred. You can update the various party ledgers, such as accounts payable, billings, procurement, generate a PDF receipt to store within the blockchain transaction, and then record the payment within a third-party accounting software with a link to the entire transaction block that can be used for auditing purposes. So that would improve cash flow forecasting. It would allow greater ease of auditing, and it would create one true database for all financial systems within a business. So a system like this would really be a future of smart payments. When we consider the usage for this within wider financial service systems, there's other case studies that are possible. Wholesale payments typically settle in central bank money after clearing and netting. So the process of going to settlement between one wholesale financial services company to another can be complicated and expensive. A future use of blockchain in the space will help simplify the operation by allowing participants to update a distributed ledger balances with certainty and security. Clearing systems are very complex. They have to work out which banks the buyer's payments must come from and which banks the sellers need to pay money into. Clearing systems aggregate and net off payments between banks, and blockchain systems can process hundreds and thousands of trades for a clearinghouse and provide real-time trading and settlement of financial instruments. It reduces complexity, risk, and cost, as firms don't really have to account for unsettled trades and capital to the possibility of settlement failures. FX payments, so FX contracts are very susceptible to counterparty risk. as the amounts are quite large on each side. Blockchain ledgers will allow multiple currencies to be held in a single ledger and for payments to be swapped in a simultaneous state change. So that will eliminate all delays in money and money transfers and make that more instantaneous. For customer onboarding, clients will often have to provide the same documents multiple times. They have to commit to keep many service providers up to date when any circumstance changes, and it creates a massive headache for compliance functions within companies. So there's a real possibility for information to become real stale quite easily. Blockchain systems will allow documents and credentials to be loaded once and used many times for external parties, reducing administration tasks and compliance errors. Trade finance, I kind of already mentioned this earlier, but from an initial letter of credit, blockchain systems can help automate the creation of trade documents and share with all parties involved. So allow a short delivery time for trade documents, reducing from days to hours, and make huge savings as well. The technology needed to solve these issues mentioned above already exists. Cost is probably the main reason why there's been less usage of blockchains. And blockchains like Catalyst are working on scalability issues. I think a lot of the one thing to kind of highlight right now is we're still in an experimental stage with a lot of case studies, as evident with like DeFi community as a whole. But the early foundations are starting to be built. So we're seeing stronger use cases and stronger reasons to implement large scale. And as soon as businesses can start seeing the savings outweigh the costs, we'll see a huge demand in the increase of blockchain.
Questions, and as we can see, especially new business models are more and more connected to the financial services, and but there is like no new, like large corporations often want to benefit from the margins of the financial services and have their own banks, especially to support their own systems. Do you think for the future will there be general banks as more demanding customers for such solutions or technologies, or will there be corporate banks to maybe advance the new business models, such as was mentioned, for example, vehicle sharing or various technologies offered as a service, which can usually only be sold or traded with some kind of financial and payment instrument?
There's a very interesting observation over here. If you consider right now, we've seen fintech as an ecosystem. There are multiple prongs of it. One is regulatory aspect, other one is currency. Previously, and even today, we have printed currency, coins, etc., right? Slowly and steadily, there is a mental shift of, okay, we need to digitize it. Or how about us digitizing it? This resolves quite a few of the problems. For example, let's say counterfeit currency notes, etc., etc. It is resolved. But we are yet to see whether there are challenges in those implementation of digital currencies. For example, China is now moving towards yuan, and what we would see and observe is how does it impact their economy? Secondly, when it comes to digitization, it's a huge catalyst. We see technologies such as blockchain. Their maturity will also mean that they would be much more affordable when it comes to maturity. For example's sake, if you consider a SSD, 10 years from now, a gig of SSD costed somewhere around $15 to $20 or even more perhaps. Right now, a gig of SSD, a gig of storage of SSD costs considerably less, 2 orders of a magnitude lesser now. There is technical advancement, there is a commoditization of technology in general, competition and other market forces driving the prices down. So it's a combination of two things: digitization brought in by modernization and the technology becoming much more affordable, and the combination of these two would make blockchain more acceptable, more usable, driven by AI, advancements of cloud. And these are the factors that one has to take into account when one thinks of wider scale utilization of technologies such as blockchain, I think.
Do you think this can even make a new competitive advantages for some players in any industry or any business sector, as, for example, the part of the service or a product, but also somehow supported by a technology solution that is highly resilient to the security issues, for example?
I think it fully makes sense. And that's where large players are already thinking. For example, Oracle, Microsoft, AWS, Google, they're all thinking about securing the securitization, ensuring that it's highly secure. The information that is held by cloud providers is superbly traceable, resilient to cyber attacks and all those things. Now, this is the direction that we are going ahead. We are taking information much more seriously because we know sooner or later, at a given point in time, our money, the reason why everyone works with each other, the value that we share with each other, is soon going to turn towards digitization. The more we trust our banks, because they're secure, we are soon going to see the same thing going ahead with cloud providers. The information and the security they provide is soon going to be translating into financial security, which is associated with a certain cloud provider or company. I'm sure our learned friend from Oracle would have something to add up on that one.
And does it somehow affect the platform you are using for such a business? I mean, that may be the question for any of you. To choose a platform is a big question for any solution or for any technology. But what about for how long time it's necessary to choose a platform because of, for example, the costs for changing the platform? How do you see this question? Maybe Mr. Majerník as first, because Oracle is a nice example of how to really create platforms, but how binding it will be for the customers?
Good question, because I think the people should realize, I know the people automatically connect the blockchain with the financial sector and payments because cryptocurrencies and blockchain, Bitcoin and so on. But in the blockchain, you can store any kind of information, not only transaction about the finance, but also transaction about the smart contracts, any other things. That means main question is what customer wants to do with blockchain. What is the main purpose to use the blockchain? If they want to use some smart contracts or different or this kind of things, is better to use some kind of the private blockchain. That means which is based on different kind of consensus. And this kind of the platform, which is based on the common solution, which is based on the open source Hyperledger activity or Hyperledger foundation, I think the lot of providers using the same platform for this. What is added value from the providers like Oracle or any other is some added value on the services on the top, like the security, like the development tools, like the tools for whole ecosystems, which help to customer to adopt more easy and more cheaper this kind of platform. That means I'm not afraid if customers select, for example, to Oracle, will be problem to change something or somehow because it's more or less based on the open source technologies. But anyway, what is the beyond the customer recognized maturity, and I'm calling this like carrier grade robustness of this platform, because this is the crucial for implementing enterprise solution.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Butler, how do you see this issue? How is it to choose the right platform? Because it's not only the question of the cost, but also huge investments, and then what are the costs for maybe changing? Do you agree with Mr. Butler?
Yeah, so I think the big thing is figuring out the problems you need specifically. Not all blockchains are built the same. So you'd have to kind of think from day one, what am I looking to solve with blockchain? I always say no one's ever up at night just thinking, God, I need a better blockchain, in general. They always have a problem, and you've got to figure out what the problems are. A lot of common problems, especially right now, is data security. I'm sure we'll see a lot more concerns with money laundering and fraud after the recent leaks with HSBC. Those are actual business problems, and that's something that a blockchain solution can come and fix. So you got to think about, how the speed, the scalability factors in particular, the security methods, the consensus algorithm, the consensus mechanisms that are utilized, and figure out which one's best for your business. And then I think the key thing is obviously the implementation costs are key, but then also there's a big element of training and getting internal trust and buy-in. So bringing in for example, a consultancy that can actually do that full kind of like delivery of not just also the technology, but also training people, teaching people about it. It's a new technology. A lot of people don't understand it or aren't fully aware of the capabilities and the power. So that's one of the big issues, I think, with blockchain in general, is that there needs to be a lot of training. I think we need to move away a little bit from just talking about some of the key things, especially from the crypto space, and just talk more about the utility of it. What can it do for me on a day-to-day basis? And then I think from that, it's the maintenance costs that at the moment, I'd say maintenance is probably too high for a lot of companies, which is, like I said, when some of the newer solutions that are coming are helping fix that. I think those are the key things, really. But I think it all goes down to the first point, which is what problem are you solving with blockchain and what do you need it to do? And then from that, you can start picking specific blockchain providers and specialists who are fixing those particular needs.
Mm-hmm. And what about calculating the costs of implementation for the blockchain solutions? As it said, means usually double costs and triple the time to really implement the blockchain solution. Is it true? Is it false? Is it just some kind of a saying of some customers, or how real are the cost calculations for such projects?
I'd say, at the moment I'd say it's costly. It's an investment. I think when you look at the lifetime value, it starts to look nicer when you look for it as a long-term investment. It is also an organizational change. You do have to kind of reconsider your operating model and how that will work full time. But I mean, there's a common saying within blockchain community about being Lego blocks. Nice thing about blockchain is you can build on top of what you already have. So, you got your layer one, then you can layer on top of it with certain applications and also future iterations as well. So, if you sometimes with certain solutions, you put something in and by the time you implement it in, it's already obsolete, whereas blockchain can adapt and can continue and evolve and grow. But I think it has to be considered more as a lifetime value versus what it's going to do for me in the next 2 years. That's probably the key thing, but it is an investment. But any technology like this is a big investment, and you just need to be able to articulate the cost of savings or the value that it can offer. And I think that's what a lot of businesses need to start focusing on a lot more, is to look at the marketability of blockchain and also the commercial viability of it. And once you can articulate the numbers to people, it starts to sound like a nicer investment, more sound investment. That's probably the key things.
And maybe for again, Mr. Párek, do you think it may somehow affect the customer experience? I mean, the final customer, the customer experience so much that it can be a reason for the service provider or your customer to change the solution or the provider of the blockchain solutions, or because sometimes they just say the banks as your customers and the service providers to the individual or corporate clients, they are somehow disconnect with the solutions. Is it maybe something which is really changing the purchasing decisions in your clients' dimension?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I think customer or the end user is the biggest driver here. It's the demands of the customer which drive the change. Previously, people used to queue up to the banks. We did not know. But as soon as we had smartphones, we demanded for, okay, can we have a banking app as well? And that's where the advent is. We are looking at more progressive work. We are looking at new ways of doing things easier, faster, better, more secure. And this is precisely where I think customer is always the king. He is the driver for every single business decision taken, so on and so forth. I think the banks are listening. They very well may have to here with new players coming in the market. Let's say, for example's sake, Monzo, Starling Bank, Revolut, last but not the least. We see the drive for digital, and banks are now quickly understanding the need to adapt to the changing times. So clearly, customer is the driver here. One must not forget the aspect of cost, the elements of security, the elements of trust. But as I said earlier, things will mature. They are yet to become so mature that a wider scale adaptation would be available. But as with cloud providers, these days we see Azure, Google, and Amazon, the largest cloud providers, offering similar sorts of service. And that's precisely where we see commoditization of a certain service. Soon enough, I envisage at a given point in time, blockchain and similar services being offered as a service from the cloud providers natively. And that's where I think finance is leaning towards, allowing more space for new services to be commoditized at a much more affordable rate, affordable pricing, and henceforth being offered to customer as an added value. It's a service which is adding towards the customer. So yeah, clearly the demand is there. Demand is going to drive the supply as usual. And we are going to see much more of these things and changes going to be happening in the near future. We are with COVID, much more things are shifting towards digital, like I said earlier. And we see things changing much faster than what one would have anticipated.
Mm-hmm. You just said the things are changing much faster than they used to. And a few moments ago, Mr. Majerník had mentioned that it's just on the customer of what information they would like to transfer with some kind of a protection of this technology. So what about, well, if you're dealing with financial information, payments, or smart contracts, it's still somehow dealing with trade issues. But what about, for example, the intellectual property assets? For example, the collaborating in the research and development activities the companies do it just to be quick enough, maybe much less for the patenting or some other kind of protection of the IP rights, but much more for really speeding up the transfer of the knowledge from the laboratory to the production or to the any field of the practice. Is it sometimes the way how the implementation of innovations can be sped up for the practice as using these blockchain solutions?
Well, certainly yes, but I think my learned colleague it would be Mr. Adam and Mr. Arfu. I think they should take this question because they've got much more implementation knowledge from me. I've got a technical background, I must say, but I think these people are much more well suitable for answering such kind of a question.
Yes, so now I'm asking Mr. Arthur, what do you think of it?
Yes. You think when we are talking about the implementation of the blockchain to protect the IP rights, or in general in law tech, it's for sure quite a big field to be explored. The question is always, how to implement this blockchain, what sort of blockchain we need over there, if it should be a private, public one, what if it's what sort of nodes, what sort of business case have those nodes to be a part of this kind of a network? Why should they give the storage, the performance to secure to be a part of this blockchain? So it's always not only the question about the business case or the how to use the blockchain, for example, to protect the rights, the IP rights, for example, but also what interest is in the network of all those participants to protect those rights. So how to create for them a benefit to make them be a part of this kind of a network. So for sure, we saw that quite a few times, that the company are struggling and what kind of an offer to give to the those potential nodes to be a part of the network. And if we are talking about the public network, how we will be able to create a sufficient amount of those nodes, how we will be able to create a proper scale to think about a secure and efficient public blockchain.
Mr. Butler?
Yeah, so we worked with a couple of legal firms actually on discussing blockchain usage, especially within the actual IP protection itself. So we've done a bit of work and realized how the process works. There was a huge kind of issue with intellectual property and the fact that a lot of the designs are all manual before patents. So that's where we actually saw a usage of blockchain in that space in particular. But it is something that's a big kind of challenge in general in terms of protecting data during the research process. So that's where we've already got we've got products out already in beta launch that is trying to solve that problem actually.
And what about the issues of the cloud-based infrastructures? If you are really dealing with the transformation from digital twins to what's called digitally native, how this can be solved, and who will solve this kind of a problem? Will this be a single providers or some kind of consortiums or JVs, or who can really be the main contributor for such solutions? Let me read, Mr. Pa.
Sorry, the connection went really bad there. Always the idea in theory consortiums should have huge success in these sort of areas because they have vested interest to do so, but they've had mixed success. I think when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it can not always work very well. I think you'll see a breakthrough with maybe a few companies working, maybe not together, but working with similar common goals, and that will have a breakthrough eventually. Consortiums, I'm not putting all my faith in. Like I said, on paper, they should work very well. Everyone has a very similar goal. However, you get mixed results when those sort of collaborations happen. I think a key thing actually can come from educational institutions. I think there's huge success with firms. I'm actually a graduate from Imperial College myself, and Imperial College has had their own blockchain center, which has really helped advance blockchain usage in both from an educational perspective, but also from a commercial perspective as well, with the research they do in partnership with various private institutions. So I feel like the education route will probably drive a lot of that breakthrough. But yeah, I'm not betting on a consortium to come together and fix this, unfortunately.
Thank you. And what about maybe we were talking about the maybe new areas of using this kind of technology, especially blockchain, business blockchain. What maybe other areas or what segments of the future development you see as those who are not saturated yet, but the issues they are facing are open to really be solved by such solutions? And maybe what are your potential future or maybe dream customer segments for this area?
I think I can suggest one of that one. So one of the biggest challenges across the globe is identity management. Let's say I am Samir Parekh, but who certifies me wherever I go? I have to put in either my driving license, my passport, or some sort of an ID in order to say that, look, this is the photograph of the person and this is what I am right now. So that ID is one of the best usages that we can put blockchain towards, purely because an ID is something that is required to be tamper-proof, it's required to be validatable, and it should be something which is very consistent. And this is precisely the bare nature of blockchain. So I think when it comes to this, identity management, identity verification are those usages whereby blockchain fits hand in glove. You cannot get a better usage for a technology like blockchain when it comes to managing, verifying, and validating the identity of a person. I'm sure others would have other usages, but this is what I think is one of those areas which is ripe for usage right now in this digital era.
This identity issue, isn't there really a technological solution to break it? Because probably there is no more serious issue or no more serious area than one's identity. Wouldn't it be a case in the future, I don't know, what about the technological progress, if the blockchain solution can be broken?
Well, it depends upon the storage, right? Because if you think, these days we are looking at storage mechanisms or data storage mechanisms which can only be written once. With blockchain, the way it works out is that copy of data is distributed in many places, and that's the essence of blockchain. You get something which is sort of a write once, read many times sort of a piece of information, and that's what we think. Yes, it is susceptible to many of the other digital risks regarding cyber attacks, so on and so forth. But as time advances, things are going to be much more stronger, resilient at providing these sorts of services. Clearly, large cloud providers, Amazon, Oracle, Microsoft, they're working towards providing such sort of services. There is an element to maturity, but when it comes to use case basis, if proper governance and infrastructure is created, this is a very perfect use case for technologies like blockchain. It just requires governance, drive from government, some regulations around it, and clearly a technical know-how of how to implement such kind of a thing which is widely acceptable and usable.
Thank you very much. What about the other possible use cases?
I completely agree with Samir on the identity piece. I think that that's something that we could see great impact in as soon as possible. I think sometimes with blockchain data, obviously, like I said earlier, data can get obsolete quite fast. But your identity is always going to be you. And being able to confidently apply for a credit card or buy a car or go to a different country and confidently say, my name's Adam Butler, I'm not someone called Josh or Mike or Paul or anyone else. I am Adam Butler, my date of birth is X date, and this is my country of origin. That's something that's always going to be permanent. And it's something that, especially with identity verification, would be much more handier. Especially when you think about all the amount of times you've done an application form or you've had to write down your name. If you could just use one one form of identity for everything, that would be hugely beneficial. So that's the one. I'm actually in agreement. I think that's where there's huge value and huge benefit across all industries is the identity management piece. And you can also spread that across things like qualifications for educational requirements. You could have effectively reduce and cut out all type of fraud with people having fake diplomas or education. You could also look at the clearances, especially if you have security clearance, if you work in a government organization. You could also help with doctors who relocate, who can need to verify their qualifications. There's huge amounts of areas on that, and I think that's where we can see some big, large potential growth straight away. And that's what I'm actually most excited about from that side is more on that part of where blockchain can be viable and useful.
Mm-hmm. And who do you think, or what needs to be maybe solved, or somehow where the technical progress should go to really use it for identity purposes, and who will be the first to really use it? Will it be governments or large corporations, or what kind of cooperation can be open for social ways of using this solution, or maybe just for commercial purposes?
I mean, we can see it in a commercial usage quite well. I think that's where you see some immediate use. For example, being marketing purposes, being able to target people online. That's pretty much how digital advertising has been focused on predominantly. Biggest spend for every company within marketing budget is digital advertising. And that can help from their side with the data perspective, but also from a user perspective, you can have the option to share your data. And how much data you're willing to share. So that's something I think you'll probably see. There's a commercial reason why it's viable, and it would make a lot of money. So not just for user protection, but also for advertisers to know who they are actually targeting is real. And then from that, you can then expand that into more of a public organization, like voting registrations, identity, etc.
Mr. Parek, you also?
I think the thing Adam is referring to is, let's say, for example, right now, when you use a browser on your mobile or maybe a browser on your desktop or something, normally these days, those browsers require us to sign in. And that is our identity being associated to that piece of software. Perhaps I'm browsing on a mobile. And that is my digital footprint, the ID, digital ID, which is used by marketing agencies. And this is one of the means of business and profitability for large organizations like Google. I think it's a fantastic use case whereby we can say, hey, you're selling my information to XYZ and earning money. How about you giving a little bit of that revenue to me, whereby I create a digital ID and I give consent for my ID and my preferences to be used by XYZ cases for marketing and advertisement purposes, and whosoever makes the revenue out of my ID, please give me a share of that ID and the value that you generate as well. So I think, yeah, it's a fantastic use case. And soon enough, I think at some point in time, there's going to be some provider who monetizes on this huge digital opportunity.
And will this new model be, or is it something on the way of how to use the data based on personal choices, which is part of the an important part of the commercial solutions, using this nearly as a currency or closely to something which is now taken as money?
Well, I think yes. When you consider browsers, let's say you browse 10 websites, every website will come up with accept or reject cookies. It's annoying. It's like 20 times clicking 20 different things, and I have to explicitly go and tick off all the extra vendors. I don't want functional cookies. I don't want tracking cookies. I don't want to be tracked. But then yet again, in one way or the other, the information is being shared. If it were to be shared, why not be a part of it? It's more like if you can't win it, join them and make the most of the opportunity from them. So here is what I think it's a fantastic one, whereby we create a digital identity. We control what parts of my digital identity are going to be making money for large corporations only if they allow to share a certain percentage of their revenue with me. They're selling my information. It's my product. So why not me gaining out of that product then?
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think it's very interesting to have new technologies used not only to be sold or to be provided as a service for money, but just to create completely new business models. And especially if this one, when described as not only technology providers, technology startups, technology corporations, but also individuals, like for example Mr. Samuel Parek, can become the part of the completely new business model using for example, their own identity as a kind of a business article and to really benefit from it. I'm really glad that we really got such interesting conclusion in this panel and this discussion. And now I would like to really thank all the speakers, Mr. Butler, thank you, Mr. Majerník, Mr. Parek, and Mr. Olachovský for the interesting, for sharing their expertise with us. And even let me please, as this is the last panel of the 2020's Finweeks, of this 4-day, maybe nearly a marathon or the really long event, and all the organizers are much more tired than any of you because they are working during all the time. So let me be the one to even say the thing, one which is interesting for the future, that yesterday during the investment summit there were the presentations of the investment companies announced to be shown, but then there becomes the new, because of their quality and quantity, there becomes the new unique opportunity to see them on October the 8th. So there will be this possibility. And but now I think there were a lot of interesting information during all the panels of the event of the Finweek, but also for the completely new businesses provided by B2B Fintech solutions, including blockchain, and provided by the expertise of these gentlemen. So once again, thank you very much for your expertise and sharing it with us, and thank you for your attention. And let me wish you, also in the name of the organizers, the company Future Proof, and wish you a nice day, and maybe see you later with the other interesting topics. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you very much, everyone. Interesting conversation. Thank you. Bye then.